This is Yair, Davidiy speaking to you from the land of Israel. I represent Brit-Am movement of the lost 10 tribes of Israel. We researched the whereabouts of the lost 10 tribes. We found them amongst Western nations. That is what we do. We concentrate upon this, upon researching the whereabouts of the lost 10 tribes and bringing awareness of who they are and where they are to others. And today we're about to discuss the British Isles, especially Britain. Britain became the most powerful country in the earth for a good while. It ruled over a quarter of the land area of the globe, and it had as its subjects about 1/5 of the world population. There's not a country that exists today whose borders were not somehow or other affected or influenced by British diplomacy. The number of countries that Britain invaded encompasses most nations of the earth. There are about 20 small nations, obscure nations such as Mongolia, Liechtenstein and so on, that the Britain may not have invaded. But apart from them, every other country was invaded at some stage or other by the British. So the British were important. They influenced every nation on earth, and they also gave rise to the USA. And its language now is the most important tongue in the world, and its culture is also very important. The British also gave rise to the USA, which is in a seamless way taken over from it and continued much about it, and in some respects may be considered an extension of it. And we acknowledge this. We see the British and the Americans as descendants of Joseph, that is the children of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh. Joseph had 2 sons, both of whom became tribes in their own right, Ephraim and Manasseh. We see them as coming to existence and giving expression to their national character through these 2 entities. Ephraim became dominant in the British Isles, whereas Manasseh gave expression to itself through the USA. And we have articles and videotapes concerning this subject, dedicated to this subject, and those who are interested are welcome to go there and to look it up. At all events, this is what we understand, this is how we understand the reality to be. And we also understand that the British are important, and that the British became a great nation, and that through studying something of their history, we also may obtain insights concerning their tribal ancestry. So we used questions on a forum. There's a question on the Quora forum. Why has England and the UK punched above its weight for so much of history? Why has England and the UK punched above its weight for so much of its history? Why has Britain been so important for such a long time? And how did it get to be what it was? That is what the question is in effect answering, and quite a few people gave answers, and all of the answers are very good. Out of the answers that were given, we chose 10 that are pertinent to what we are looking for, and had something to say that we consider to be of importance to you. Not saying that they are not of importance to others, that the others are not important as well. This is the way things go. This is what we have done. We chose these 10 answers, and we have summarized them, and we will explain in the summary form what they wrote, and then we will discuss biblical verses concerning the lost 10 tribes in general and Ephraim, and show how these answers or this information that we have gleaned from the answers or the insights that have been revealed also help us in confirming our identification of the British with the members of the lost 10 tribes of Israel, and especially from the tribe of Ephraim. So André Tessier de Cross, he gave 3 basic reasons for the greatness of Britain. He said that these 3 reasons were the geographical environment, laws and culture that enabled and encouraged free enterprise, and the psychological disposition of the people. Geographically, the island had the right size, it had the right climate, and it had fertile soil that could support a significant population. It had colossal reserves of coal, of shale, of iron ore. It also had the possibility of a massive industrial development from a geographical point of view, built on low-cost energy and on cast iron and steel. The steel engine was first designed as a pump in coal mines. Once it was designed as a pump in coal mines, then it could be used for other purposes. That led to railroads, and railroads led to other things. Railways were at first used in the mines to carry ore, to carry out what they dug up. He also says the constitutional laws encouraged free thought, free speech, free enterprise, free trade and private property, including patent laws, meaning intellectual property. The national psychology gave rise to establishing the most powerful navy on earth, to the principles of free trade that benefited other peoples as well, and it helped create the British Empire. Then we have John Burgetti. John Burgetti, he attributes British greatness to sound administration, and the reaction of the British people to it, to the relatively greater payment for labour and for skilled craftsmen, and a well-fed and well-armed military. This enabled prosperity that enabled an intelligentsia that returned remarkable benefits of science, medicine, art, cultural diversity, and industry back to the common labour force. As an explanation, we should note that economic studies have shown that where more money is paid for labour, where labour is at a greater cost, where the worker gets more payment in real terms for the work he is doing, there's a greater incentive on those who are employing him to introduce machines, to introduce labour-saving devices. This increases production, production increases wealth, and this is an ongoing cycle that is to the benefit of everyone in the long run. And countries that have an over too much dependence upon cheap labour are usually nations that lag behind. For instance, it's claimed that the Romans knew the principle of steam power, and they were quite intelligent. They could have invented steam engines. They may have even developed a few, but they did not develop them on a wide scale. Why? Because they did not need them, because they had slaves who worked for nothing, or almost nothing, for their food and so on. And it didn't pay to develop these steam engines. If they had paid them to do so, they may have themselves at that early stage developed the steam engine, and they may have brought about the Industrial Revolution at that early stage, and the world may have got ahead much earlier than it did. So he says that because the British, that is John Burgetti, he says that because the British paid more money to their workers, maybe they had to pay more money to their workers, therefore this increased the cost of labour, and this led indirectly to progress. He also mentions that of the 100 most influential people, according to a list that he depends upon, the 100 most influential people who ever lived, 20 out of this 100 are from the UK, 5 of them from Scotland. And the people he mentions who are important, who influence the world more than any others, they include scientists such as Isaac Newton, James Watt, who developed the first steam engine, Michael Faraday, who gave us the use of electricity, and others. Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations, a book on economics that laid down the theoretical framework of free market economics. Elizabeth I, the Queen of England, reigned 1558 to 1603. She presided over an era of economic and political expansion which laid the framework for Britain's later dominance as world power. As Queen Elizabeth also established the supremacy of Protestantism in England. And there were others, including Oliver Cromwell, who executed the King of England, and in effect laid, by his example, restricted the possibility of tyrannies developing in the British Isles. Whatever the case, we have other opinions. We have Ashutosh Mahendirata, and he attributes the greatness of England to the Tudor dynasty. The Tudor dynasty began with Henry VII, it continued with Henry VIII. Then there were the children of Henry VIII. Of them, Elizabeth I was the most prominent, and she was the one who really got things going. And he emphasises the role of Queen Elizabeth I, and Elizabeth encouraged sea dogs, pirates, buccaneers to attack the Spanish ships, Spanish colonies, and in effect to go to war with Spain. And she also brought developed a culture, a whole cult, and John Dee, who was a personal kind of magician, a conjurer in her court. He was an astrologer, but he was also a thinker, an ideologist, a philosopher, and one may say he also conceived the concept of a British Empire. And also, he apparently believed the British to be descended from lost 10 tribes of Israel, or at least a portion of them. And there was also Francis Drake, who apparently had similar ideas, who circumnavigated the world, sailed around it. At the time, Britain began to assert herself as a powerful nation, as a force to be reckoned with on the world scene. There was Martin Gibson. Martin Gibson stresses the importance of Britain being an island, not being invaded for the past 1,000 years, of relative freedom to think for oneself, and that encouraged the expression of individual talent and tolerance. And he points out that most groundbreaking innovations are created by one or two individuals, a society that allows people to think for themselves, that does not persecute mavericks, that lets eccentric go their own way, that is conducive to independent thought. That's what it gets. It gets people who come up with innovations, who come up with new ideas and develop them and push them forward and talk with others about them. And it leads to an intellectual climate that results in prosperity and results in progress. So this is what Britain had, according to him. He also said that Britain had natural advantages. The Romans, he said, the Romans, way back in Roman times, invaded England because it was rich in sheep. Even today, the UK is half of all Europe's sheep. By far the richest source of metals, above all in Cornwall and Wales. Cornwall produce several different types of minerals, especially tin, Wales copper, and they were probably in their age the major suppliers of these materials to the whole of civilization, and not enough work has been done on this, not enough emphasis placed upon this, because they were important places in their own right at that early time. And according to our understanding, this led to the Assyrians using seafarers from amongst the Philistines, the Minoans, the Mycenaeans, and from the Phoenicians to colonize these areas with deportees from Israel and from other areas. And this is one of the major ways in which members of the Lost 10 Tribes first reached these areas. Also a major migration that moved overland through northern Syria and the Caucasus region into southern Russia, and from there westward to Western Europe, and there over to the British Isles, also through what is now Turkey, through that region in southeast Europe, and also upwards to the west, and from there once again to the British Isles, and where the Lost 10 Tribes from along these different pathways, they converged in this one area, as may be shown by historical studies, also linguistics, mythology, and it is confirmed by biblical studies. Also, as he says, Marcus Gibson says that geography was a factor in making Britain great. The gigantic reserves of steam coal and iron ore located close together. The iron ore was located close to waterways, where you could use canals to transport the products, to sell it, to bring it to places where it may be refined and processed. And this was a gift from God Almighty, as if the Almighty had planned it this way, had laid the land out in such a way so that when the British came, they may use it, that it may be conducive to them, one thing after another. They would find it all laid out for them, all ready for them to develop. And this led to Britain becoming a great nation. He mentions an interesting fact that as late as World War II, Britain outproduced both Germany and Soviet Russia in every category of war material. There's aircraft, ships, track vehicles, steel, ammunition. Everything except tanks. The British produced more than the Germans and the Russians together. They also invented penicillin. They saved more lives than any other drug. A radar, the British developed it, and other things, electronic warfare, and They also were responsible for planning and carrying out much of the D-Day invasion of Europe that freed the world from the Nazi menace. Ralph Berger attributes British greatness to science. Science, he says that science led to steam power and the Industrial Revolution, and this in turn led to greater wealth, and greater wealth means greater power, and one thing led to another, and this is how the greatness of Britain came to be. Also, relative freedom of opportunity was also important. Pat McCormack says that the British became great through imitating. At the beginning, they imitated how to make cannon, how to forge iron. They copied the Ottoman Turks. That gave them an edge over their rivals and their opponents and their adversaries in Europe. Also, they had an innovative credit system, a stock exchange, and they used science and an aggressive foreign policy. And he points out that there are only some 22 polities on earth that the British did not attack. Every other country on earth at some time or other was attacked by the British. Alexander Lovaty emphasised the adroit use of financial services exemplified by the Rothschild banking family and government policies. Hannah Madan, she says that geography was an important factor. Being an island lent Britain protection, and also this was enhanced by the creation of a navy. Also, Britain was close to the trade winds which facilitated movement and sailing to the Americas, and this was much easier for British ships to get to those regions than it was for French and Spanish ships who were their rivals in that region. And this was one of the factors that led to Britain becoming a great nation. William Stewart emphasises human factors. That Britain was the first to industrialise. This gave it an advantage. It had a historical lead on other nations. By the middle of the 18th century, that's about 1850, Britain accounted for 23% of global industrial production. And also Britain had an educated population and it had coal as an energy source. But he says the bottom line, explaining how Britain became great is that nobody really knows. So lots of theories, but few stand up to scrutiny. That all of the different explanations may be partial explanations, but they don't explain everything. So that is what the experts or the people who have studied or consider this phenomenon have said. And this ties in, this corresponds with biblical prophecy, was promised to the lost in tribes, and especially Joseph, Ephraim, and Manasseh would be immensely popular. See Genesis 15:5, 22:17, 24:60, 32:12, Numbers 23:10, Isaiah 10:2, Hosea 26:15, Isaiah 10:22, 26:15, Hosea 1:10. Also, they were wealthy with both agricultural advantages, Genesis 27:28, 49:2-5, Deuteronomy 33:13-16, Hosea 2:8, and mineral resources, Genesis 49:2-5, Deuteronomy 33:13-15, as well as being powerful, Numbers 24:7-9, 7-9, Micah 5:7-9, Deuteronomy 33:7, 33:29, Jeremiah 51:20-21, Zechariah 10:7, Zechariah 10:7, Jeremiah 51:20. Relatively speaking, they would do justice, they would establish principles of righteousness throughout the world. See Genesis 18:18-19, Isaiah 42:1, and also 42:6, Amos 5:15. And these blessings, along with others, came to fruition in Western nations of Israelite descent. Great Britain and the USA were especially blessed in this regard. Divine providence works through nature and the right combination of circumstances. Prosaic reasons for the greatness of Britain included geography, Britain being an island and thus relatively free from invasion, helped. It was free from foreign interference. Being placed in the Atlantic Ocean close to the major trade winds was also important. This led to taking advantage of these advantages and developing a powerful navy and being prepared to use it. having a fertile soil, suitable for grain, for agriculture in general, for sheep, mineral reserves, coal, shale, iron ore, and also in ancient times copper and tin, with gold in Ireland. And all this led to the benefits from wool and linen industries and innovations such as a steam engine and railways to take advantage of the mineral reserves sent to cotton mills and so on. It had been promised that the lost in tribes will be centred in Ireland. This is one of the major factors. It says in Isaiah 24:15, Isaiah 49:6, Isaiah 69, Jeremiah 31:9-10. Therefore glorify the Lord, Isaiah 24:15. Therefore glorify the Lord in the dawning light, in the name of the Lord God in the isles of the sea, Isaiah 24:15. It also says in Isaiah 60, surely the isles shall wait for me, and the ships of Tarshish shall come first, to bring your sons from afar, their silver and their gold with them, to the name of the Lord God of Israel, and to the Holy One, to the name of the Lord your God, and to the Holy One of Israel, because he has glorified you. Also Jeremiah 31, he says, from my father to Israel, Jeremiah 31:9, for my father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn. Hear the word of the Lord, O nations, and declare it in the isles afar off. He who gathered Israel scattered him, and keep him as a shepherd does his flock. And also says the lost and tribes will be in the region of Tarshish. That is, Isaiah 60 says that the lost tribes will return. They will come back in ships of Tarshish. Tarshish historically was an area in southwest Spain, near the region of Gibraltar. It was a whole colony with a major city. It was probably ethnically they were probably been founded and probably been founded by people who were related to the Greeks and Tarsus from southeast Anatolia, that is modern day Turkey. But even so, the Phoenicians at some stage ruled over it, influenced it, and it was an area that supplied to the Assyrian Empire foodstuffs and silver and gold, silver and lead and other minerals, and also acted as an emporium which relayed tin from the British Isles to the Assyrians, and so on. And it also gave its name to the Atlantic Ocean, and according to the rabbis, Tarshish became a name that was applied to the Atlantic Ocean. So ships of Tarshish means ships supplying the Atlantic Ocean. That means in the end times the lost and tribes will be in the Atlantic Ocean area, or a good portion of them will be, and ships will come from that region back to the land of Israel, bringing those tribes with them. So this is worth noting, and this was also a factor that led to Britain becoming great because of its location in that region. And also the lost and tribes will be at the ends of the earth, as it says in Isaiah 41, I've taken you from the ends of the earth and called you from its farthest regions, according to the common translation. The region, which translated as farthest translation, the words translated as farthest regions in Hebrew, Atzileah, meaning the noble, meaning the most salubrious, the most beneficial areas that amongst those regions that are at the ends of the earth. That is the geographical extremities of the continental masses, such as Australia, New Zealand, North America, Scandinavia, Northwest Europe, and the British Isles. All these regions are literally at the ends of the earth, and all of these regions are those in which the lost and tribes were to settle according to biblical prophecy. Also says they shall be in many waters, that is, in many oceans. See Deuteronomy chapter 33 concerning Joseph, as it says, 13. And of Joseph he said, blessed of the Lord is his land, with the precious things of heaven, with the dew and the deep lying beneath, with the precious fruits of the sun, and with the precious produce of the months. And the deep lying beneath means mineral resources. And it also says that there would be in many waters, in Numbers 24, verse 7, he shall pour water from his buckets, and his seed shall be in many waters. It says there will be seafarers, Isaiah 42, verse 10, sing to the Lord a new song, his praise from the ends of the earth. You who go down to the sea and all that is in it. You islands, and you inhabitants of them. So this too is pertinent to the British Empire. And we have other verses, numerous other verses, all pointing in the same direction. So when you take all of the different sources together, this is the result you get. The lost in tribes were in Western Europe, and especially in the British Isles. And in the British Isles, Ephraim gave expression to his tribal character, as it had been predicted that he would. And it says that they shall give our rise to other peoples, and allow other peoples to become who they are, the fullness of the nations, that is to complete the peoples, ensure their existence, Onkelos says it means seed will rule over the nations. See Genesis 48 verse 19. And we have other verses describing military power, describing the name John Bull, that is Egel in Hebrew. Nobility, ruled by nobility, a pathway of diamonds, having kings as the nominal heads of governments or heads of state, such as the British do, being related to Goma, that is Western peoples, so having been involved with them, culturally involved with them at some stage or other. Also the very name Hebrew, the ancient inhabitants of the British Isles were known as Hebrew or Heberi, and this was what they were known by. Nowadays, in encyclopedias you will see that the former inhabitants of the British Isles were known as Celts. That is not the name that they call themselves. The name that they call themselves appears to be Heberi, and this means Hebrew. And this is the name that they gave themselves, and so on. They're also represented in the Bible according to Numbers 24:7-9, the King James Version, by a lion and a unicorn, and here King James Version is suitable to the Hebrew original. We have another point of interest. It says, as we saw, that the British became who they are due to intellectual endeavours, due to intellectual freedom, due to tolerance and encouragement of research, of thinking for oneself. And we have in Psalm 60 verse 7 or verse 9 in some editions, it says, Gilead is mine, Manasseh is mine, Ephraim also is the helmet on my head, Judah is my lawgiver. This expression, Ephraim also is the helmet on my head. In Hebrew it is my Rashi, and this may be understood from the Hebrew as saying something like the strength of my thought. The strength of my thought, that is the one of amongst my sons, amongst my tribes, who gives expression to independent thought of his own. And this is a possibility that fits the Hebrew. You can take it or leave it, but it fits in with the other findings, and it is something of interest. So all of these different factors, taking them all together, lead us to the conclusion that lost end tribes are amongst Western peoples. It confirms what we already know from other sources. The historical records and opinions concerning them also tie in with biblical verses. And they show us that divine providence wanted the British to become who they are, and it prepared everything for them in advance. But they were psychologically and emotionally and nationally predisposed to take advantage of this, as had been foreseen from the very beginning. May the Lord God of Israel bless you. Thank you.